to sign. Okay, thank you. So this is now our regular town board meeting. I want to start with just a couple brief announcements. Unfortunately, our highway superintendent, Mr. Mark Gears, is necessarily absent this evening, battling a tough, difficult cold. It's not COVID, he assures me. We have 6 employees celebrating birthdays in the month of December, starting with Mr. Nick Bodine on December 1st. We have Brian Emelson. Where's Brian? I thought him here.
There he is.
There he is. Hey, Brian. Brian's on the 15th. Mike Tilley on the 23rd. Keith Maynard on the 27th. And the 30th, we have Mitchell Page and Stephen Bell. So congratulations to all those individuals. Birthdays coming up this month. Also, we have on Monday, December the 26th, the day after Christmas, all town operations will be closed. In the month of December, our 2 board meetings will be, the first one will be on Monday the 12th, and then the second one will be on Tuesday the 27th, again, because we are closed on Monday the 26th. So those are brief announcements. Now we'll move to our business. We'll start with the approval of November 14th town board meeting. Board members, any changes, corrections?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, payment of bills. Manifest number 22. I'll ask our town clerk to please present it to the board. Oh, yeah, that's all right, go ahead.
Yeah. Manifest number 22 for 2022 in the amount of $527,332.89 has been reviewed by the Victor Town Board with the following accounts charged: General Townwide, General Outside Village, and Highway Townwide.
So for those residents who maybe your first time in a meeting, we don't want you to suffer from sticker shock, so we want to explain a few things up here. So what we try to do is identify expenditures that are in the range of $5,000 or more. So we'll start with payment number 1 is to B&M International. This is for the December rents for the courts building. Next is Bluestone Creek Development. This is the December Parks and Rec facility. And then number 3 is road salt purchases for our highway crew. Payment to Keeler Construction, Lane Road sidewalk project. Again, we utilized ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act funds for this project. Payment to Lehigh Hanson, road projects. Value Protection Plan, this is payment number 7 for those residents in the Modoc Springs area that were included in the original map 7+ years ago. And then payment to New York State Retirement, this is our 2022 contribution. Payment to New York State Comptroller for October court fees that were collected, but the state wants their share. And then the final one for a purchase of a recycling container. So the total of the above-mentioned expenditures is $493,692.30. Total town expenditures minus these previous mentioned expenditures equals $33,640.59. Board members, any questions on abstract number 22?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Manifest number 22, paid. Privilege of floor, Patty Sampson, Bouchard.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you to the board and the public and one of my neighbors. A couple neighbors that we all live in the Southgate Hills development off of East Victor Road, Phase 1. And a couple that wanted to be here tonight that came down sick and decided it was in the best interest to put their notes in email. So you're in receipt of those.
So she has distributed, yep, there's 2 emails.
Thank you.
Thank you, and
So thank you again for your time. So as I said, we're residents of Southgate Hills, Phase 1. We've been there for 4 years. We were 30 years in Parrington, and really amazingly blessed to, number one, discover Victor, discover the most wonderful aspect of Southgate Hills, which is the hiking trails and the beautiful location that it is. We couldn't be happier. However, my neighbors can attest, I'm out and about with our dog about 3 times a day. I'm a bicyclist, an avid hiker, walker, et cetera, et cetera. And it came to my attention as I was spending a lot of time in that beautiful part of town, that wonder if East Victor Road, which was obviously a huge connector at some point in time, has basically aged out of its speed limit. In other words, there's been so much that has changed along East Victor Road over the years, and even the 4 years that we've been there, and what we understand to be future development of Southgate Hills 2 and 3, and another development of a significant number of houses. And I just have to say, as a relatively new resident of Victor, it definitely feels like an unsafe road for pedestrians and bikers, pedestrians with dogs, pedestrians with young children. And I thought, and my background is financial, but it's all analytical. So I said, I'm going to spend some time, and took a couple weekends and just traveled other Victor roads and compared 45 miles per hour, which is what East Victor Road is, to other roads in the town that are 45 miles per hour. And also looked at 40-mile-per-hour roads, because the hope would be that we could reduce East Victor from 45 to 40. And what I found very interesting when you look at 45-mile-per-hour roads, and I submitted this as a piece for you all to take a look at, is that if you remember East Victor Road, if you've traveled it, as we all do so frequently, it has curves on it. It has the crosswalk to Auburn Trail. Take a look at the shoulder size, the paved shoulder size. It absolutely varies. It is actually a pretty good paved shoulder when you go around curves. But on the straightaways, where most of us are biking, walking, accessing Auburn Trail, there's actually a 15-inch paved shoulder. So just imagine you're in a car and you're coming across a pedestrian with a dog, pedestrian with a child, a biker, etc. So I looked at Brace Road from Boughton to Break a Day, Gillis, Dreyer, North Street where it intersects Malone. Those are all 45-mile-per-hour roads. What's incredibly interesting, if you look at them, of all of those, and Route 96, 45 miles per hour, Route 96. And if you look at all of those 45-mile-per-hour roads, East Victor Road has the smallest paved shoulder on its straightaways. It also has more curves than any of those 45-mile-per-hour roads. And some of those 45-mile-per-hour roads are just roads where there's single-family homes at a distance off of the road, versus the developments that are starting to occur on East Victor Road with more and more regularity and obviously increased traffic flow. So it just feels like East Victor Road has aged out of being a 45-mile-per-hour road. When you look at 40-mile-per-hour roads in Victor, I looked at Baker, I looked at Valentine, I looked at High Street coming out of the village going north. Actually, High Street, I would love East Victor to feel like High Street coming out of the village. High Street has 40-inch paved shoulders. And again, East Victor, 15-inch. And High Street is a combination, like East Victor, of development and single homes. Very similar feel, but I would just ask the board, please drive East Victor Road. Drive it from 96 to Boughton. drive it safely. Tell me if your speedometer ever gets to 45 miles per hour, and if it does, for how long does it? Because I'm going to assure you that it's not very long. And then imagine that you're doing that in the morning when the sun is coming up over from the east, and you're coming around the curve at Auburn Trail, and my neighbors can attest to it. The sun blinds you, you can't see the curve, you're on that curve, and you're on that pedestrian crosswalk before you know what's happened. And then imagine that there was a walker or there was a biker that suddenly came from Southgate Hills 1 or 2 or whatever down the road. So, of course, I think our primary concern is to see 45 go to 40. But if that can't happen for whatever reasons, and I'm not versed in politics, but if that can't happen, we really ask that those shoulders be looked at. We understand that there's some future development of some sidewalking because some of the builders have agreed to that. We just don't want to wait that long. Right now, for the bikers, and I'm glad to see some of our park friends and biking friends, I go as fast as I can on East Victor Road on my bike and get to Auburn Trail as quickly as I can. And sometimes I just walk my bike on Auburn Trail on the part that you're not even supposed to have a bike on, because to be on East Victor Road on a bike is pretty scary. So better shoulders would be wonderful. Some additional signage we heard before, and I was so glad to hear about how everyone wants safety. But a blinker on that crosswalk of Auburn Trail, I mean, again, please just drive East Victor Road and see how fast that crosswalk of Auburn Trail comes up on you. And imagine if, in fact, there were some lights that gave you just that little extra bit. And in fact, one of the written comments from one of my neighbors, she actually did a study on stopping distance. And she, if she were here tonight, was going to tell you that if in fact you saw somebody on the crosswalk and you needed to stop, your first time that you would see that, you're already past especially going 45 miles per hour, you're past the amount of footage necessary to make a good stop. So I think there's some improvements that could be had. I think this town wants to be pedestrian and friendly and biker friendly and trail friendly and all that good stuff, and that's why we moved here. I just feel like we've got some work to do. I think East Victor has outgrown what its initial intention was as a connector road, and it now feels much more like just a very neat neighborhood road where a lot of good recreation is happening, especially the access to Auburn Trail. So anyhow, I would just want to thank you for your time and consideration, and we'll continue to try to be as safe as we can on that road. It's just not easy. Thank you.
So Penny, you stay right there. So a couple things I did, and it is unfortunate that our highway superintendent is ill. Hopefully he'll maybe watch the YouTube of this, because yourself and certainly Mark Robbins, who's going to follow you, also, some points of interest for what Mark does, his responsibility for the town and as highway superintendent. He did want me to share that East Victor Road was petitioned back in May of 2018. So I think it's a 2 or 3 year window when we can petition. So we will gladly do that petition. But I'm going to give you some copies of, because I went looking today to put my fingers on it, and Karen says, how often are we successful in these petitions? And I said, probably 5% of the time. So instead of the Dear John letters, I call them the Dear Miss Bodine letters. This is from the New York State Department of Transportation. We have completed our review of Willowbrook Road between High Street and Raleigh Road relative to the establishment of a lower speed limit. Our review includes an observation of roadway characteristics, analysis of vehicle speed, and a review by the state police. During our review, a representative from this office visited the site to evaluate roadway characteristics and analyze vehicle speed by use of radar. We also met with the traffic supervisor from the New York State Police to seek his input about lowering the speed limit. In consideration of the roadway characteristics and review by the state police, we determined that a reduction of the speed limit is not warranted at this time. Next one was from Phillips Road between Route 251 and County Road 42, denial. Aldridge Road between High Street and County Road 9, denial, same thing. You know, so what we will do, we'll work with the Planning and Building Department, I'll give you these, work with the Planning and the Building Department to look at the future build-out here in the next couple of years, to your point, you know, your phase 1, phase 2, and the other developments. And then unfortunately, back when our commuters are by nature creatures of nature, and when the roundabout was being fixed at that time, so people found, from various parts of the town, found other ways to go to Canandaigua, and hence East Victor Road is now a popular choice by individuals, as you are finding. So we'll look at that. I also want to talk, I think this is, so certainly applaud you for doing your research and looking at a variety of roads, not just coming here and saying East Victor Road, but using comparisons, and hopefully you wore some kind of fluorescent something out there. I didn't want you to get hit by a car. I was doing a project for the Victor Town Board, and I got hit by a
No,
car.
and I had my dog with me, and, yeah, it was pretty crazy, but it was all good.
But it's a conversation, certainly, I have no problem having a conversation with the highway superintendent. I don't know where East Victor Road is, and, you know, we look at, he has right now, I think, before us, a 7-year capital project. I mean, you know, these projects, I don't know where East Victor Road follows. High Street, great point, it is a beautiful road, so I'm going to share this with you. High Street also leads annually with the most traffic citations written in the town of Victor.
Interesting.
So what we do, this board, for the past, I think, 5 years now, we pay for additional traffic enforcement with Ontario County. So above and beyond, and we are going to increase that next year. We've also we've added solar signs, you know, recognizing you're doing 40 and a 40, you know, 45 and a 40, whatever, because we have a speeding issue throughout our town. Regardless of where, you know, I could have residents from Strong Road, they tell you the same thing, from the north area, the south, and it's just, it's difficult. You know, we're trying our best and work, and we will certainly do all we can to enhance this petition and, you know, add some, you know, figures, growth figures, but there's no guarantee. So it's not, we would love to. Now, a village, so a village can change their own speed limits. That's why you'll see Church Street, you'll see Maple, I think they're both 25 miles an hour. Unfortunately, towns, we have to go through this process where both, I think, the county, New York State DOT, and the state police get involved.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, thank you for your interest, and thank you for paying whatever attention you can to it over the next year or 2 or 3.
Okay.
Appreciate
Okay.
it very much.
Very good.
I will say thank you for the spreadsheet. I mean, I really like the definitive information there.
You're
It's-
welcome.
It took the subjectivity away from it. It's completely objective, and I think that I agree with what the supervisor said as far as, you know, being able to pass along those shoulder sizes to the
Thank you.
highway superintendent. I mean, you know, certainly doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I think it's tremendously helpful to have that data and to show you really
The shoulder
looked at
improvement
it.
would be a good step in the right direction.
Well, that's where I'm thinking, Jack, is that if we can't, I mean, we'll try to petition as soon as we can, and if we can't get that, then I think, you know, we certainly should look, I mean, East Victor Road is, I mean, every time you go around there, being a local, you know where the Auburn Trail is, right? So you're always watching to make sure there isn't anybody coming, but the folks that are going from Rochester to Canandaigua, they're not looking, I mean, I'm not saying they're not looking, but they're certainly not as versed. And when we used to have to walk down that Auburn Trail and go around to get back on the trail, right? That was, and I think that was before your time, or
Yes.
as that development went in, now we can go, at least go straight across through there, which made it a lot safer. But it's a,
I think that's a great point.
But the bikes can't. There's a lot of
Exactly,
bikes that
yeah.
can't use that,
Yeah,
that
right.
rocky area.
yep.
So it
And
is.
if I might add, you're right in to say just to drive it. It's hard to speed on that road. You know, the curve, because I live right around the corner, I've lived there all my life, and the curve at the old Hunt House, if you're going more than 45 miles an hour, we used to do it as a kid because it'd throw you over on the other side of the car, and you had dad's station wagon, and it was fun back then.
I don't want to hear that.
Since they used that road for a bypass road when the bridge was out and it became the commercial road and people started using it, and ever since they've done projects on 96 and our road, Mountain Hill Road and all that, and that became, people found that road. And now the traffic on that road has increased a bunch, and now there's another 2 portions of development going in there, so you're right. So, yeah, I mean, I appreciate the effort that you put in, and we can put in as much as we're allowed to do and try and change something, but
all
and
we
Jack's
ask.
right, enforcement seems to be the only avenue we're left with every time, and if we can direct some of it in that direction, it might help and stuff, and
Because we were hoping to have that type of reputation where, hey, listen, you're going to go on Victor, abide by the speed limit, because you're going to get ticketed, you know, on, but
Yeah.
I hear from even our own residents, hey, I got a ticket. Okay, then slow down, that's all I can tell.
Thank you.
You got tickets as well?
No, excuse me, I'm her neighbor. And,
Why don't you come to the podium, because for the YouTube, we can't hear, just identify who you are, and then we'll ask, I see our Director of Parks and Rec would like to speak after, but go ahead.
Hi, my name is Casey McFall. I'm Patty's neighbor. I've lived there for 5 years. My concerns, in addition to what she's noted, are short sight lines of the curves. Specifically, I've measured them out, they're 150 meters. And if I'm doing 45 miles an hour, I can't stop in that amount of time. And if I'm traveling from north to south, I definitely don't have the amount of time because I can't physically see anyone on the Auburn Trail from that direction. I can see them from going south to north, but not north to south because of the way the berm is. It's very, very dangerous, and I'm, just because I live there, I'm very cognizant of it. And as you noted, I can't go around that curve comfortably any faster than 30 miles an hour. I wouldn't even consider it. I have a four-wheel drive car. Let's see here. My other concern is, as we've noted, there's going to be increased population living around there in the next 1 to 2 years. That area is being built out aggressively. My concern is, now that we're going to have increased population around there, we're also going to have significantly increased construction vehicles around there that are a hazard to the people who currently live there. And we're going to have significantly more people living around there. Add to that, you're going to have a lot more people walking, a lot more dogs, a lot more traffic on that road. Let's see here. The straight sight lines are less than 200 meters. And even then, if I'm traveling 45 miles an hour, I can't stop in time. Let's see here. She mentioned the sunlight, and that can definitely limit view. The worst case scenario is, of course, driving north to south in the morning at the Auburn Trail intersection. And I noticed, sir, you provided her with several copies of denied requests. Are there any copies of approved requests that she can look at so she can try to determine what some commonality of data points are?
we've had one in,
We
since I've
approved,
been.
did High Street get
Not since I've
reduced?
been here in
Quite a long time.
5 years.
Did High Street get reduced by the beer project? That far section of High Street?
You've been here 5 years?
5 years and I haven't seen
Gillis down by my place is at least 10 years old. I think the 45 on Gillis is at least 10
Even
years old.
It's unfortunate.
I don't remember one in 5 years or more.
it. Yes, he would have been able to explain.
He saw the
He would
agenda.
have, he would have probably gotten the earful from it.
Yeah, right.
Is there any way where we can get
3 years you can petition.
Is there anywhere where we can gather information on what successful petitions did look like, so we can gather what were the common data points that they were looking for?
Yeah, well, we can do some research.
You can foil that. If you foil
Yeah.
it, you can research that here.
Yeah.
Okay, what's foiling?
Okay, it's just an application, it's freedom of information.
Okay,
We can do that.
Yeah.
okay.
So you can do it online, there's a form online on our website, or you can come into my office and fill one out.
Or you
Or
could
you can
even
just
submit
email.
one to New York State DOT.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay,
That's probably your better app.
Yeah.
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 Submit a FOIL request to DOT asking for copies of speed reduction approvals granted by DOT.
okay.
In the town of Victor.
In the
town of
town
Victor.
Or in any town.
Yeah.
I would,
Because you see my point, if there has to be some kind of common data points that they're looking for that make these things successful.
Well, and I'm also thinking down the road as the Lentine farm is developed, the planning board is the one that kind of pushed for the sidewalks, you know, from the developers along there. They also might be able to squeeze some revenue from them for widening those sidewalks if they're not on our, or not the sidewalks, but the roads. I mean, if those shoulders were, if there was 40 feet, 40 inches off the pavement, off the road, I'd feel a lot better riding my bike around that corner, but not 15 inches. I'm
No, it's
I'm
pretty scary.
20 I'm 25 inches
I was
wide,
gonna
so.
say, I don't think
the
any of
town
us are.
doesn't squeeze any developers. The
I know.
town asks for them.
I know.
Fund,
You know what I mean?
mitigation measures.
why the attorney's up there.
Impact of their project.
You know what I mean?
So if Patty were to see you, ma'am, she could,
I mean, I would have our records here, I can look to see what we have, but that is a good idea to, you know.
And I do think that at one time, from all those roads. Like Brace Road, Break a Day, all those roads at one time were the same as East Victor, and they've been redone. And East Victor hasn't been redone in a long time. And
I
I'm
think our,
I'm
part
sure.
of our Parks and Recs wants to speak.
Brian.
I'm
I'll check with the village too, because I know Maple and Church had speed reductions in the last 10 years. So maybe the village got to remind.
The village doesn't need to appeal.
Village can do whatever they
Does not
want.
have
So they can do what they want,
petition
okay.
Yeah.
Brian, you
Thank you.
want to talk? Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Brian.
Brian Emelson, Director of Parks and Recreation. Maybe just clarify some things before we ask more of Mark, or just that might resolve some of this. Just so everyone understands, when we did the first Auburn Trail Improvements and Connections project, we did widen the actual pavement of East Victor Road from the intersection of Break a Day and East Victor up to the Auburn Trail on the, what would be the northeast side. I think what you might want to look at, and maybe talk to Mark about, what the current striping pattern is out there. We did we were required by DOT as part of the grant, because we couldn't fully connect on the railroad right-of-way. We were required to put in a 5-foot wide shoulder on the southwest side of Break of Day, as well as the northeast side of East Victor. So if you follow me. But over time, the striping pattern, which would fall under Mark, may have changed. So there was a 5-foot wide shoulder out there. What you might want to look at is at least an 11-foot vehicle lane and a 4-foot minimum of a pedestrian lane. 5 foot's preferred, 4 foot is acceptable in alternative transportation corridors. So that's one thing. From a near-term standpoint related to the Auburn Trail, we have money in our budget. I've just recently approved a plan to make improvements to the Auburn Trail, so it's much more bike-friendly on the Auburn Trail in the area that you call out about being rocky. It's a grade challenge for us. We can't really hold stone dust in that area because it's rapidly going down towards the creek. Also, it is prone to flooding. So we broke up that section of the Auburn Trail into 5 different segments and looked at what's feasible. So we're going to do some additional grading this winter, provide new stone and surfacing out there, make some drainage improvements within our right-of-way out there. There's some things that are more challenging as you get down towards the footbridge, where it does flood at times. It might not have flooded in your time there, but it is prone to flooding. If the Lentines or the Mistreskis, the 2 landowners that we tried to acquire property on the right-of-way, which weren't successful back in 2003 and 4, ever developed to Councilman Condon's perspective, we could look at being back up on the alignment and therefore we'd be higher than the culvert, if you will, which is what causes the flooding. So that's something to look forward to. If you have any questions regarding that, you can certainly call me. I'll furnish you my card. And there is, through the planning process, we did request sidewalks on Southgate Hills Phase 1 and 2 on the west side of that phase, not the current reviewed plan, Phase 3. So there will be sidewalks to get you on from 1 and 2 down to the Auburn Trail on that side. So that's something that the developer will be putting in as part of their conditions of approval.
Thank you, Brian. Okay. Mark?
You can afford it.
I'm hoping that the highway superintendent does watch this YouTube.
Okay. Which way to orient this?
Joe, why don't you show it to the residents, because we
have maps.
Mark, we have,
All right. I want to thank the board for the opportunity to present tonight. My name is Mark Robbins. I'm a resident of the town of Victor for the last 30-plus years. I love it here. One of the reasons I love it is that it affords me so many opportunities to be active. I'm an active bicyclist, and I do a good amount of walking and hiking. And we're in a great part of the world to, for engaging in those activities. which isn't to say we can improve. We can't improve, rather. Also, tonight are other people who may want to speak to this. We have Larry Fisher, Lisa Roberts, Dave Wright, Brian, Scott Page, and they may want to make some comments after I do this brief presentation. So basically, we're proposing that 12 of our town roads, and we have them prioritized, receive signage, and it's signage that was called out in the connectivity presentation, bike and lane signage. Okay, I think all of the town board members would have received a summary of what we're going to be talking about tonight, which includes the picture of the bike and lane signage, which we also saw called out in the connectivity presentation. Basically, where we're coming from is we're a group of citizens of Victor who would like to see opportunities for cycling improved throughout our town. We've had, as we heard in the 6 o'clock presentation, we have a long history of making recommendations to improve cycling conditions. And I'm talking tonight mostly about on-road cycling conditions. The 2007 Parks and Rec Master Plan, the 2015 Victor Comprehensive Plan, the Parks and Rec Master Plan, the connectivity plan that we heard that was presented tonight. All of those plans have called out a need to improve on-road cycling accommodations to make it a safer activity for those who wish to engage in that, and perhaps to attract others who are not currently comfortable to use the roads for that activity. Skip ahead, last fall, 2021, a group of members of the Parks and Rec Citizens Advisory Board, Citizens Advisory Committee, may be frustrated that we're not seeing progress made in terms of on-road accommodations, began looking at ways to rethink, to reconsider, how we might, in a cost-effective manner, make some improvements. And we came up with the idea of placing bike in lane signs as a means of communicating to motorists, A, that there may be bicyclists sharing the road, and B, that it would be Victor's way of proclaiming that, yes, bicyclists have a right to travel on the roads. Again, it's a relatively inexpensive step that the town can take. We've identified 12 roads, 54 signs in total on those 12 roads. For example, at Dryer Road, we need to place signs at all the major intersections so that people getting on Dryer Road from School Street, from Malone, from Strong, will be aware that bikes may be in the travel lane. So some roads may get several. 54 roads altogether. 4 of those are in the village. The other 50 are spread throughout the town, and try to capture them here. We've got Brownsville, East Victor, McGann, Grace, Strong, Murray, Poole, High Street, Gillis. Did I say Gillis already? Willis Hill, and that covers most of them. There may be 1 or 2 I've left out. But they're on a list that was attached to what the board members have received. The cost of this, for purchase of the signs, at least as of fall of '21, was $224 each. The total cost for the entire project would be just over $12,000. The cost to the town being $11,225, and the village picking up somewhere around just under $900. A presentation, a very similar presentation, was made to the Victor board back on November 3rd, and at least from our point of view, those of us who presented, we felt that the board was receptive, and we were told that our recommendation would be considered strongly as they go into their budget discussions for the upcoming fiscal year. We did, the group that originally got together last fall was, thought that it may be more economically feasible to roll this out in a 3-year, let's say, a 3-year phased-in manner. We're totally open to that. Just a few words about the use of the signs. They're approved by the state of New York. MUTCO, the federal body that regulates the use of signage, several years ago decided to replace the share the road signs that we've seen several in Ontario County and elsewhere throughout the country. Those were considered, well, they were replaced by the bike in lane signs. They're for use only on narrow roads defined as less than 14 foot from the center line to the edge of the usable road surface, and less than 14 feet, and those, by definition, that's an inadequate space for a bike and a car to travel side by side. So they're intended specifically for narrow roads, as I've just defined, and all of the roads on our list meet that definition. So our request is that the town commit to purchase and install signs per request within some, designated time frame. We would suggest, within 3 years. We feel it's again, a cost-effective way of promoting safety and promoting active transportation in our town. Thank you for the opportunity
Okay,
and questions.
Couple questions, if I
Yeah.
could. These quotes from Northern Supply, are they fresh ones, or are these ones?
From this past August or September.
Okay.
21,
Because, from 21?
yeah,
Okay.
so they may have
'Cause,
gone up.
yeah, Mark indicated when he did speak to me, he says, I think these may, they're not the most updated, but like everything, it's going up. But, I guess first I'd love to, I'll hold my comments to the end, but ask the board members if they have any, their thoughts on these signage and what's being proposed here.
No, I definitely agree with it, Jack. One of the things I do have a question on, Mark. What I see, because I live right near the intersection, is, especially spring, summer, and fall, large groups of bicyclists. And by large groups, I'm saying 12 or more, riding in groups. What order is this? I'll get to that one second. Coming from the area, I don't know if it's from Dry Road Park, but from Dry Road Park to Cork Road, and then going down Cork. And on Cork Road, and it's not mentioned in your presentation, it's curves and it's very narrow, where Mark had to put in guardrails along the side of the road, because on both sides, it slopes way down. So it's really narrow, even for two cars passing each other. So I know you didn't mention Cork in there, and maybe if you took a couple off of the drier pile of signs and put them on Cork, that might be helpful also. But just, I know that we see many, many bicyclists either coming or going on Dryer, and most of them, I want to say most, I would say more than 60% turn down Cork for whatever reason. Some will go down to school, right? But we see a lot that come and go on Cork. And the other thing we see a lot is vehicles with mountain bikes, that are coming up Cork, turning on Dwyer to go to Dwyer Road Park all the time. Because you can see the bikes mounted in the back of their vehicles. You know, so there's a lot of traffic around that intersection, so you just might want to consider that as part of it. But I agree, there's a lot of spots in the town where the roads are narrow, they're being shared, and I'm seeing more and more activity and more bicyclists. So I agree, I think it's a good project. The other question I would have would be for Brian, in year one, with their presentation, could you absorb that into the already approved budget if you had to?
I couldn't absorb it into the existing budget. First question would be, Mark has oversight over this type of activity typically. I'm willing to work with this group and the committee because my commitment as a cyclist and as a Parks and Rec director and, to foster this project and take it on, but I want to make sure it's okay with Mark.
Right, agreed, but I
And
just,
as the highway superintendent, because this is not something that typically, and this was discussed in the CAC, this is not something that typically falls under Parks and Recreation. But those of you that know me know that I'm not typical. As
Right.
my wife would also tell you.
here's my thought. If it goes to Mark and Mark says, oh, no, I don't have any money in my budget, I didn't put it in for this year.
I think he's already asked, I think this group has told me.
He's already shared that with me, Councilman
figured that.
Kohovic. That
Which
was
is
part
why
of my
I'm-
phone call.
which is why I'm
I didn't
asking
budget
you,
for this
could you-
check.
Couldn't absorb it, but, I'll figure out
A way.
a way to,
And let me buy the
someone knows
director
not
of
getting something.
Fair enough.
I'll buy the finance director a cup of coffee tomorrow morning and go have a conversation with him
I wanted
about this.
that, by the way.
I did, so board members, Mark did indicate he didn't have the money for this, for 2023, but I said if the board was committed to doing this, would you budget accordingly for phases 2 and 3? Because, Mark, I also want to compliment you, also had a timeline in here of 2025, I think, something like that, so I
Right.
do appreciate that as well. And timelines are good, otherwise it kind of gets stalled type of thing, so I will, but board members, other board members, please weigh in, but I will certainly have a conversation with
I assume you
Rich.
can't use trust money for
Parks and Rec
this?
Trust Fund?
Trust money for this,
Or-
Brian?
No, we can't.
No, right.
That's why, maybe it'll be 2 cups of coffee with the Director of Finance.
Okay.
One of the reasons I came here tonight was we had already been informed by Mark that there was no money in the budget for the current and the coming fiscal year in his budget. So we're looking for some
Supervisor, I have
other.
Yeah, please.
certainly a few comments I'll make as the liaison from the town board of the CAC. And first of all, thank you for making the presentation and to the members of the CAC for coming. I think that this presentation kind of speaks to the function of the CAC group, and that it's an advisory group that identifies important components to the parks and rec rating throughout our town, and continues to persist maybe when the first attempt failed, and that certainly is the case here. We looked at budgeting for it for this year, and it didn't quite happen, and you're back around at the table. So, and certainly I was active in the discussion that we had recently at the CAC, and I was supportive of it there, and I mentioned that I'd be supportive of it here. I think, really when we look at the high priority roadways that the CAC selected a year or so ago when this first came about, we discussed what other options are available that are better than this. The multi-use paths, widening roads, narrowing travel lanes so that we can get more out of the edges of the roadway, and a lot of that becomes very large, expensive projects that require multiple years of planning and execution, and to a large degree, they're just simply, unfortunately, unrealistic on some of our pre-existing roads that have whether the homes that are close to the road, the natural features and curvatures of the road that make that really difficult to do very expensive capital projects. And when it all boiled down, this was a realistic, reasonable option at exponentially lower cost than any other option that identifies important corridors for our cyclists. And then I think that from when it comes to a public safety perspective, I think honestly it's a no-brainer. And when I think of the public perception perspective of, I live off of Modoc Road, so I'm down Strong, Cork, I'm down a lot of these areas very, very frequently. And I think that, over a very short period of time, motorists are going to see these signs and align with the fact that they're going to expect to see cyclists, but cyclists are also going to identify their safety corridors for travel, and that really that's where they can hone in on maybe their routes throughout the town. So I think that it's mutually beneficial, and I think for the cost of $11,000, I think to me, it's a no-brainer.
Thank you. Appreciate your input. Okay, Mark. Yes?
Appreciate the input around Cork. That, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Just wanted to piggyback on something Brian said, you know,
Mark, why don't you just come closer to the microphone?
we should. I strongly recommend that in cases where it's feasible, we look at restriping of some of our roads. And that can do a couple of things. Decreasing the travel lane can, you know, produces, a road calming, well, it's supposed to produce a road calming effect, reduce speed, naturally reduce speed by motorists, and you also create space for others to use the road safely, or more safely. There are other or other people who may want to speak.
Lisa Roberts, I'm a village resident at 1256 Wellington Drive. So we pretty much received a verbal approval from the village to put up signs, but there's only 2 main roads that cyclists go on in the village. So I'd hate to see signs only in the village. We worked on prioritizing roads. We're not asking for all the money in 1 year, but the cost of someone getting hit or killed is much greater than $12,000 or $7,000. So, yes, I agree. Brian does an excellent job of working outside his job description. I strongly believe this is a highway department funding, not a Parks and Rec fund.
It won't be a Parks and Rec fund.
Okay. Thank you.
And Wes and Steve, I think we have a meeting Thursday. Let's add road striping as part of our conversation to educate myself on, and so, okay? Yes, Mark? You good?
I guess, yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm hearing that this would tend to fall under highways rather than Parks and Rec.
Roads, yeah, roads are all highway.
Okay.
Yeah, roads, the striping, Patty's comments as well, that falls under the jurisdiction of our highway superintendent.
Okay.
We're hoping he's feeling better much sooner.
Yeah.
Okay, so, let's see, privilege of the floor. The third speaker, I had Mark Zorno, and Mark may be here. Is there also an Andrew Torpy with you as well? Okay.
We are here to request an adjustment to the conservation easement that was put on our property in 2008 when we subdivided off 2 acres to sell. It's a straight-up land swap. We have enough acreage to make a little room in one area and add a little room to the easement in another area. So the square footage wouldn't change at all. It's just going to make it more useful for the potential buyer of my home to have horses.
And board members, just, I did sit with Kim, and she filled me in that this development, I guess to make the 50% open space, that was met, and that was part of it. There was no language ever filed, so between the Conservation Board and the Building and Planning Department, they look at this as a fresh start opportunity for new language, and evidently we have a landowner willing to swap land as well? Is that part of this, or am I inaccurate?
A little bit of a convoluted situation. I own it, I'm selling it, he represents the buyer, and this is their desire, so
Yeah,
I'll
so
let
when
him
he
talk.
placed it, for sale, he did receive an offer contingent on being able to free up the backyard. So when the conservation easement was originally put in, it encompassed most of the backyard of this, this property. So the buyer would like to use the backyard, so it was contingent upon moving the conservation easement to the front. We did go back to the original surveyor, and I don't know, did you guys receive this today? I sent a PDF copy
Yes,
of it
this-
over.
each board member has a copy of it.
Okay, great,
Thank
great.
you for
Yep,
that.
that's the one, yep. And so we did go back to the original surveyor, who redrew it, keeping the exact same square footage and just moving the lines. So it doesn't really change any of the characteristics. We still have the continuous edge all the way around it. It just frees up that backyard area and moves some of it out to the front of it. Same type of terrain and everything.
To be used as pasture.
So the red dotted line, was that what it was before?
No, the red dotted line is the setback.
Okay.
So what it was before, you may have that already there as well. But anyways, what it was before is it didn't include most of the lands out in front of the house. It really just had a large border around the back of the property.
And when we drew those lines, there was no reason for us to choose any one area or another. We just chose a border around the edge, made the most sense.
Yep.
We didn't want horses, so.
The only question I have, and I'll admit, I really should have looked at the adjoining properties, and I didn't. Where you'd be losing that easement along that back corner edge, property adjacent to that, I guess what's the proximity of whatever, is there a
Nothing.
home there? There's nothing there?
Over a mile to Victor Road.
Okay, all right, I just didn't know, and I should have looked. I didn't know if there was
Yeah.
something there where that easement might change the landscape or the view of the person.
I don't think it really
next to
could be
you.
developed. It's a pretty steep hill behind us.
Okay.
So, right behind us where you would see, I don't think you could ever build a house there.
Yeah.
It's just too steep.
Okay, and my interpretation of what the board that had reviewed this didn't have a concern with it?
No,
Is that
they
correct?
didn't.
Okay.
Well, they created some language that they would include in the new easement, riding horses and that. But yeah, you're right, Drew, they supported the swapping.
Yeah, so I certainly, and I should have looked at that, and thank you for clarifying that, but
Yeah, no
I have
problem.
no issue with it.
I'm Andrew Torpy, correct, I'm the realtor, so I'm Keller Williams Gateway out of Canandaigua. I represent the buyer, which is Jessica.
I should know this, Mark and Andrew, maybe you do, I don't. How many acres do you have to have horses?
So in that town, I believe it's 2 acres, plus you can have 1 additional horse for each acre above that, or
So if you own 2 acres, you can have a horse?
I believe so.
I give myself a horse.
Better sell some of that land first.
I don't have any issue with this, but that's my comment. I mean, I think you're staying with 50%. I like the opportunity that they can add some language. I read through the Conservation Board's comments. I always refer to them because I see them as the experts on that, and Kim. And I think that, you know, it certainly is in line with what's out there on Brownsville. You know, it certainly is part of the, you know, forum, I guess, you know.
Yeah, there's a bunch of places around that have horses.
Exactly.
There's a llama farm right across the
Exactly,
street.
Exactly. So I personally don't have any issue with a swap like that. Still stays with the 50%, and that's my opinion.
Yeah, originally it was considered site-specific, and through talking with the Conservation Board and stuff, we'd like to include the septic. In other ones that have happened before, there has been, you know, underground infrastructure for approved residential septic systems, you know, to be maintained within that line and all of that. So everything that's here has been done before.
So have you seen the language, though, for the easement?
Well, I have the language for a similar one here for a site-specific, not for this property. This
Okay.
property apparently never actually had the language drafted.
Yeah.
Yep,
But,
correct.
and as I'm looking at it, and I want to make sure that you understand this, it says there should be no mowing, including but not limited to any mowing of wetlands, with the exception of seasonal mowing, and it'll be designated how many times annually. So all that area in front of the house may only be able to be mowed once or twice a season.
Correct, that's brush.
Right, okay, I just want to make sure that that's
It's
understood, because,
non-mowable now.
okay.
Everything that's included
there are.
Now
Yeah.
is not lawn.
Because there are a lot of people that seem to forget or ignore that
Yes.
portion of it, and all of a sudden it's all cut, and that, oh, no, that's my lawn. Well,
Yep.
yes, but no. Okay, I just
Yeah,
want to
we
make sure.
did not include, in the proposed conservation easement that we have here, we did not include anything that he has maintained as lawn.
Okay.
So one of the things I understood was it's horses and agriculture. You intend to grow hay or anything on that property?
No, and as a matter of fact, they're not actually petitioning at this point for horses. They just want to make sure that in the future, they have the ability to do that. So,
Your client would only be looking to change it to allow horses on that easement area?
no, so we're changing the easement area so that they would not require any type of, we're changing where the easement is so that we would not infringe upon that easement. So if it stayed how it currently is, yes, they'd have to get some type of variance to be able to have horses on the conservation easement. However, by moving it, doing the land swap, they may now have horses without being on the conservation easement, which is what they're looking for.
Okay, because this easement that's included in the town board's agenda says that horses could be kept within the easement.
Well, that's fantastic.
Reading it right here.
I like it.
Yeah.
Being that there was no language written when I did the easement, is this all a waste of time?
Was this the easement that you guys provided to the conservation board?
Yeah.
No. Nope, they drew their own, yeah, they drew their
The way
own.
this is written right now, no livestock is allowed with the exception of horses, which may be kept within or on in compliance with that.
Yeah, that's, I mean, moving forward, I mean, they would have eventually like to have a small barn and a couple of horses. And, pasturing doesn't need to be on that, but it certainly could be, I mean, it certainly.
Because if you look at 14 going on, it says no plowing or cultivation, but then it says with the exception of, and there's a blank. Yeah, at least this is the version that I'm looking at.
Yeah. Is it the barn that would be more important than the horses themselves, if it allowed for horses currently, but the current conservation easement might restrict the placement of a barn in the rear of the
I
property?
don't know, I think we need clarification from the conservation board, what they.
For the most part, we're not looking to put anything on the conservation easement. We're looking to change the location of the conservation
there is no
easement
conservation.
so that we don't.
Don't infringe on it.
Correct,
But that's not the way it's set up.
correct, I understand that,
So
yeah.
we need to clarify with the conservation board.
Right now, if we approve this, they could pasture the horses on
Yeah,
the front of the
so we
property.
need to it's not set up for approval tonight.
Right, I know.
It's set.
Yeah.
But we need to clarify what it is exactly the conservation board. And they may be recommending.
Yeah, just the wording seems a little, like maybe they copied it from something that they didn't intend to or something,
Then
but,
they didn't complete.
correct, the exception, right. And then the other thing, obviously, in the future, if they decided to build a barn, stable, whatever they want to, that would have to come back to the building and
That would
planning.
go through the building
Correct,
department.
okay.
Correct, yeah, it wouldn't be anything out of the ordinary.
Correct, okay, just make sure that that's understood.
This is just setting them up so I can sell
That
them
they
the
could.
land, right?
Yeah, in general, other than the wording and that one portion, I have no concerns with that swap.
Well, clerk will follow up with the conservation board and come back to probably before that, verbalize that back to the board, maybe at our next meeting, and then anything else you would need, Frank?
No, I think just confirmation from.
I'll have Karen work with you.
So there's no way to do a contingent approval upon the town board or upon the conservation board giving you the information that you need? So
Not
that we
set up
can,
tonight for approval. We can Potentially set up the next
For-
meeting's approval.
Yeah, the 12th, December.
oh, December 12th,
Be
okay.
the next, so we could do it. If Karen gets everything, and Frank's, we've had board members that have, conveyed their support, and Karen and the attorney talk and get we should be good to go.
Okay, great, I appreciate it, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next, public comments and concerns.
Randy Shea, 50 West Main Street, Victor, New York. I am glad to be participating in the planning for connectivity in my own way. I am very thankful also that Susie's helping me, so I'm going to try to keep it within 3 minutes. It's been a long meeting already for you guys. So, first thing I want to do is a little unusual, but back in college, they said you should have visual aids that will help you with your presentation. So I have cookies here, and by a show of hands, it's not a trick, how many people like chocolate chip cookies?
Who doesn't?
Okay. So I think everybody pretty much likes chocolate chip cookies. Okay. So if there was one ingredient in here, the chocolate chips, there was 9 pieces of chocolate chip, and there was 1 piece that was actually dog dung. How many dog dung, I think that's a fair way of saying it, if there was dog poop, 1 piece to 10, how many of you would eat these cookies? If I raise, nobody's interested, right? The point of this is that overall I like the plan, the connectivity plan. But there is some parts that I think just should be removed before you call it a quote-unquote plan. Now, I did talk to Lorenzo after the meeting. He clarified that the grant was for a plan, so you have to call it a plan. But what it really is, and he even admitted, is more of a report, a final report. So however that works out legally, I understand, but a lot of that is conceptual. So one of the things that's in the conceptual plan relates to the connectivity to the school. Now, in talking to Lorenzo, he also clarified he did not know the answer to this, whether the cost estimates that could be used for grants include sidewalks. He doesn't know that. Okay, so he doesn't know if those cost estimates that are in what's currently the final plan include sidewalks. And according to this whole connectivity thing, sidewalks are important. And I would think they'd be all the more important if you're connecting the school, that there'd be sidewalks included. So that's an important thing that I think should be considered. Now, assume that the 9 out of 10 are the things that I like in this. I'll just say there are parts that I like that make sense. Starting here, going down here, possibly down here, but I'll talk to you about that in a minute. Up here, here, and up here makes a lot of sense. Going down here, that makes a lot of sense. Those are all chocolate chip cookies, okay? This, I have a bias, a personal bias, but I think it doesn't make sense even without considering that. This, I think, should be taken out. This is a part that doesn't make any sense. Most of you and people that have been involved in planning know the story of Tim Hortons. They know that the excavation that was, I know it's at the village level, but it was approved, and the engineers planned on digging into the hole so that they could put Tim Hortons in there, and they did 3 different excavations. The first one they thought would hold, but it didn't, because of the soil type that's underneath. The soil type underneath is a sand berm. At a town level, there was a similar problem down where I think Fisher's Ridge is. For many years, people were complaining that the sand kept coming down and the property owner needed to take care of it, and the town said the property owner needed to do it, and the property owner said the town needed to take care of it, and it just kept coming down. So what I'm trying to tell you is, because I live here, I know that this is a sand berm that goes all the way from one side of Victor all the way to Plaster Mill. It has been dug out in some spots. But I'm trying to say that if you're going to connect it with the school, first off, let's just say that somebody comes to this corner either way, okay? If they're coming from the school, if it was like a school bus, that's a hard right. They wouldn't be able to take a right. Any larger vehicle couldn't take a right. They'd have to take a left, they'd come back up. This little small section of Dreier is what this whole road would pretty much be servicing. Can you see it? So there's not a lot of need for this road. The other ones I kind of like, and it makes a lot of sense. You don't need this one. The idea here of putting potentially 16.5-ton school buses going down that road on the side of a side berm a sand berm, that maybe the engineer will account for it, but we don't even know if the cost estimates include sidewalks. So I don't think they did a lot of, they probably just plopped it down, thinking that maybe they'd get grant money. But the problem is that I don't think that they figured out the cost right. That's another part of it. But just imagine, living in one of the houses down below, which I do, and thinking about the possibility of that berm giving with vehicles driving up above your house. I don't like the idea of eminent domain. Now, this is getting more personal. That's at the village level. I know it's not the town, but the idea of doing it also takes out a big portion of my backyard, and for a lot of reasons, I think it would depreciate my value of my home, even for me living there. So if you're going to approve a quote-unquote plan, you also do not want it to be controversial. And I can tell you, if you approve it with that in it, it will be controversial. I also looked at the people that are in the connectivity project team, and I also heard Lorenzo say that they want to talk to the school, but they haven't talked to the school. I would have thought, in putting this together, one of the first group of people you'd probably want to talk to is the transportation department at Victor Central School. If I'm right, this has to do with a grant that could possibly be gotten that relates to Victor Central School. And the bus drivers, I already can tell you for sure, would tell you they're not going to take a right-hand turn there. They just can't. The other thing about buses, highway department, guy who's in charge of that, supervisor, is not here, but he can confirm it for you. Plaster Mill Road is 9-ton limit. You can't drive on it with a 16.5-ton bus unless it's local delivery. So they've made an exception and let school buses drive on the uphill side of Plaster Mill Road. But the reason they won't let them drive on the downhill side is because of soil conditions. So when I'm talking about a sand berm, I'm not making it up, and the same soil conditions exist down there. So I don't even think it would be safe for a school bus to drive down that road. But I'm not an expert at any of this. I'm just saying that if you're going to approve a plan, you're going to put the ingredients in and stick it in the oven, you might not want to include certain ingredients that people aren't going to like. And that's what I have to say. So I have a lot more input. I did an online video. It took me 30 minutes. I said I'm going to try to do 3 minutes, so that's it. So thank you for your time. If you want some cookies, I have some. No, nobody wants cookies. I don't.
Are they all chocolate chips?
They're actually raising oatmeal. Chocolate chips, they're getting expensive at the store.
Any other members of the public? Okay, in your packet, you had the report from the highway superintendent, IT, and then real quickly, a couple items that I had. The unused medication take-back day was a very good success. Let's see. I thought I had the totals. I apologize. The Victor Farmington ambulance report was in your packet, and I did send out last week the denial on the WIA, or the sewer pump station improvement grant. Keith did follow up, and the state has responded that there's no guarantee that there'll be more funding next year, but if there is, certainly encouraging Victor to submit another application. And I think I've shared it with you, all of you, maybe privately, but on the 17th of November, I did notify the Board of Supervisors that I would not be seeking re-election this coming December. So I think 10 years of fun is time for someone else to be chairman. So that's all I have. Let's move to resolutions.
Excuse me.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Karen, go ahead.
All of you board members did get a copy of the lead agency letter. I think Kim sent it out, emailed to everybody. Do you have any objection to the planning board taking lead agency for the 1086 Strong Road project?
This is the project that, remember last time Doug was here for water?
Yep, yacht farm, right?
Yep.
Oh, I know.
I have no objection to that.
No objection.
The yacht farm, it was last meeting, they're gonna put 10 houses on 35 acres. He wanted water.
Is there rezoning?
No, it's an R3.
I can send it to you. Want me to email it to you? No, that's fine.
They were looking for a water extension and we declined. So, okay, no, I think we're good. And when you're ready, we'll go to the resolutions.
Okay.
Okay. Number one is the authorization for the clerk to petition the state. I find this to be a little comical, but
So moved.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Number two, out of the Finance Department, this is authorization to contract for GASB. This would be with Brown and Brown Consulting.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Number three, purchase contract and service agreement with Toshiba for town records room copier.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Number four, this is to extend our auditing contract with Mangle Metzger Bar for both the town audit and the courts audit for 3 years.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Number five, and again, this is to memorialize what was taking place. Actually, Kevin Overton had provided a letter that I had signed and they had signed, but this is memorializing it through a resolution process.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And number six is the Framemark Place Apartments authorizing the transfer and the pilot agreement.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Is
Those-
that a roll call? I don't know why there's a page there.
No.
Oh, it's not, I'm sorry, reading this thing.
Those opposed? Okay, number six is approved. Number seven, Victor Senior Apartments authorizing the transfer and pilot agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Actually, those are roll
I was
calls.
just going to say,
Those
because they
are roll
were on,
calls, sorry.
I didn't have them on there. Okay, I'll move back to six.
Go to 6 and please do the roll call. Thank you, Drew.
I'm 1 for 2 now.
Supervisor Marin.
Yay.
Councilman Kovac.
Yay.
Councilman Condon.
Yay.
Councilman Guinan.
Yay.
Councilman Cusimano.
Yay.
Okay, so moving to number seven.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Roll call. Supervisor Marin.
Yes.
Councilman Kovac.
Aye.
Councilman Condon.
Yes.
Councilman Guinan.
Yay.
Councilman Cusimano.
Yay.
Okay, yes, thank you. Number eight, authorization to enter an agreement with Red Truck Painting for completion of the town hall painting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Public comment. Again, an opportunity for members of the public to care to address the town board. Hearing none, entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
10 years as chairman. Go out on my own rather than